the society or by the culture to define and contain that gender. So they do not, observe those boundaries, and rather they choose, a mode of transition that best characterizes what the concept of transgender. So Susan says that transgender is basically an umbrella term. And it is used to cover all those individuals who are gender deviant in nature. As I told you just now, gender deviant means who do not fall into the gender binary of a male or a female. And they may be even those individuals who are transvestites or transsexuals. Now, who are transvestites? To put it in a nutshell, transvestites are people who generally cross-dress. A man would like to dress up, put on clothes or makeup to look like a girl or a woman, and vice versa, that a woman might cross-dress and be, put on clothes and other attributes that make her look like a man. These people are transvestites. Whereas transsexuals are those people who undergo sex reassignment surgery, or we also call it gender reassignment surgery. And they are the people who cross over, that boundary of gender to become a male or a female. They undergo these different types. This is altogether a very different dimension of, in the area of transgender studies, where we read about these different types of surgeries, where, it can be both from male to female or from female to male. And the different kinds of surgeries, the surgical procedures that these people undergo in order to become a male or a female. So these people are transsexuals. So Susan Stryker has called this transgender as an umbrella term, wherein we include all those individuals who are, who fall beyond the gender binary. And they also include, we also include in them the transvestites and transsexuals. Now, another transgender activist and author of America, whose name is Leslie Feinberg, has given another viewpoint about transgender. Who are transgender people? Now, Leslie has given a radical meaning to this term transgender, and she Feinberg says that transgender is a pan-gender movement of oppressed minorities. Just now, in the introduction, as Manali, very aptly pointed out, that these are the marginalized people who are subjected to much violence, discrimination, prejudice, all sorts of, hatred, and every kind of neglect and we ignore them, in our lives. So all these, oppressed minorities, in which Feinberg includes, as I told you just now, the meaning of transsexuals. So according to Leslie Feinberg, we include in transgender all those minorities, such as one is transsexuals, then another is the butch, or the, we call them, this is a slang, lesbian. So a butch is basically a lesbian who exhibits a masculine identity or gender presentation. Then we have drag queens and even the drag kings. Drag queens are those males, generally they are males, who use drag clothing or makeup to imitate the gender, female gender identification. And on the other hand, we have drag kings, who are those people, usually females, it's just the opposite, who put on these clothes, drag clothes, and all these other signifiers to look like a male, right? And both the drag queens and drag kings, they do all this in order to, basically for theatrical purposes or entertainment purposes. And then we have cross-dressers, that is, I told you just now, transvestites. All these, are included in this term transgender, which Feenberg calls a pan-gender movement, who are being oppressed in the society and who, together form some kind of a revolutionary cause with one another in the name of social justice. Then we have another definition which is given by Vivian Namaste. Now, Vivian Namaste is a Montreal-based transsexual activist and theoretician. And in the book entitled Sex Change, Social Change, Reflections on Identity, Institutions, and Imperialism, she has again, called transgender an umbrella term. And how does she define it? As constituting all those people who do not fit into normative relations between sex and gender. Again, the same that we had just, read about, that, a person who's born with the female genitals does not feel that he is a female, but, psychologically identifies himself as a male. Right. So there is no one-to-one relationship here between sex and gender. So all these people, they fall into this umbrella term of transgender. And again, Vivian also has, included all these. I think I have now told you who are transsexuals, then drag kings, drag queens, transvestites. Okay, intersex individuals are those people who do not identify with either male or females. They, their genitals do not correspond to either of the sex of a man or of a woman. So Vivian includes even those people, these individuals, intersexed individuals, into this umbrella term transgender. Then there is this article, Transgendering, where Wendy and Susan, they have explored this prefix trans in the word transgender and have given certain, meaning to this prefix called trans in 3 ways. So in the first meaning, trans, stands for change or transformation, where we transform the body, change the body from male to female or female to male. So they do not feel satisfied with their genitals, with which they are born. And thus they feel like, transforming them, changing them into the different sex, right? To the opposite sex. So the first meaning that Wendy and Susan attribute to this prefix trans in the word transgender is change of the body from male to female or female to male. Then the next meaning that they give is across. That is, a transgender person is one who moves across genders without undergoing any surgical procedures. So first one was when they're changing their body, right, from male to female, how? By way of surgical procedures. But in the second meaning, trans can also imply those people who do not undergo any medical procedures, yet they deviate, right? Yet they change themselves. How? By way of external changes, bringing out other changes, like maybe, they dress themselves up by their body language, maybe by choice of sex partner, or, other bodily changes. So all this, will help them to assume a gender identity which they identify with. Then the third and the last meaning given to trans in the word transgender is those people who have gotten through gender. That is, they do not actually remain constricted or, limited by the boundary of gender. They altogether refuse to accept this very, essentialist attribute of being a male or a female, right? So this is what they say, that gender is like surpassed altogether. Now, this is one meaning which is very uncommon and which is important, very important to gender theorists, because, it is only this meaning that would help them to eliminate or to bring about the possibility of eliminating gender oppression altogether. But this is something, which to me seems to be a utopian utopia. It's not that easy, to refuse gender, because we all live in very, hierarchical and kind of, even I can say to some extent, orthodox societies, especially in India. So, well, this is what we understand by transgender. The term transgender, as given by Susan Stryker, Leslie Feinberg, then Vivian Namaste, and Wendy and Susan. I brought about, some of these together. There are many other ways, in which transgender, but because these are the, very prominent theorists and, professors who are working in this area, so I brought about these few definitions before you. Now, why, why should we, or what is basically the constituents of transgender studies? Why are we trying to, delve into this? So the first thing is that we are trying to understand how the various phenomenon of our society pertaining to gender, sex, sexuality, embodiment, identity, all these have been understood over the, period of time. How are we, looking at these? How are we criticizing them? How are we forming new types of knowledge and practices in relation or in light of the more recent transgender phenomena? So, as we are trying to trace the shifts that have taken place, right, over at least 2 decades ago in context of these transgender people, whether whether their lifestyle or their acceptance in the society or their economic and political status, has it changed, or if it has changed, then has it changed for a better or even for the worse? Then we are transgender studies explores a range of phenomenon related to deep, pervasive, and historically significant changes in attitude towards and understanding of what gender means and does in a sometimes chaotically post-modernizing world. So gender, is a term that is being understood, re-understood, defined, redefined in this post-modern world. So this is also a very important aspect of transgender studies, that we are trying to understand the changes that are occurring continuously as to in relation to this term of gender. So it provides a wide-ranging critique of the conditions of contemporary life of trans people, as well as new understandings of the past and novel visions of futurity. That is what I think a scholar's merit goes, that he or she should be able to provide a vision for the future, and probably a brighter future for these trans people. Now, when you are, we are trying to delve into this, area of transgender studies, what I would like here to do is help you understand certain terms that you would come across very frequently when you are studying the critical material, in the area of transgender studies. So these terms will help you, to understand the criticism that has been there. So the first one here I would like to speak on is transphobia. Now, the term itself, I think, is quite clear, that phobia stands for fear and trans is, transgender people. But actually, it is not only just, the fear of trans people. I think it is very common for especially Indians, to harbor some kind of fear of these people. Even, as children, we have been protected from them. We have been given false notions about them that they steal children, or they can cause harm to children or to people around. So it is not that, we are not only speaking about the fear that is instilled in us against these trans people. It is much more than that. It pertains to all those negative attitudes that we harbor against these people. I think I'm not exaggerating if I say that most of us look upon them or look at them with disgust, with repulsion. The moment, you see a trans person on the street, you are bound to maybe turn away your face or maybe look at the transgender person with a kind of, hatred or disgust. So that also constitutes transphobia. And these are the attitudes, of prejudice, of hatred, of this, indignation, of, our preconceived ill notions against them that cause, a lot of violence against them. That is the root cause of so much of sexual, physical, verbal harassment that these trans people are subjected to. When you read, I will introduce you, further down in this talk, a few autobiographies, where these people, the transgender people, speak about the immense violence that they are subjected to by the people, whether, even the cops, the police, who harass them for no evident fault of theirs. It is just by virtue of their being, a transgender person that they are, physically tortured. It is extremely painful to read those, excerpts in these autobiographies wherein they tell that how they have been beaten up brutally, made to kind of take off all their clothes, in the police stations, all, just for the sheer enjoyment of the police personals. Like, there have been instances like this. So transphobia is a very important term to be understood, because it actually, helps us to understand the violence that is perpetrated against them in the society. Then, there is Talia May Becher, who's a professor at Los Angeles. And Talia says that, transphobia occurs in a broader social context. And that is the reason why we put these transgender people to disadvantage. And, we even promote and reward those people who are against the transgender people. Now, transphobia, Talia says, can be manifested differently in different cultures. Like in Latin America, the representations of trans people is done by even, associating them with being a criminal. Then in certain contexts, like the therapeutic context, transgender people are viewed as being mentally ill. So, these such representations, may not be found in other contexts like sex work. But this is how, we see that these are different ways in transphobia exists, whether we call them criminals or we call them, mentally depraved people, psychologically depraved, whatever. But transphobia has different manifestations. That is the, gist of it. But at the same time, we have to understand a very important aspect here, that not all the violence against trans people can be transphobic, because there is this one important aspect to be understood here, which is of intersectionality. You know, a trans woman, maybe she is targeted not because she is transgender, but because she is a sex worker. So there are two, kind of aspects that are working together, but maybe the cause of violence against that particular transgender person is not because that she is a trans person, but maybe because she is a sex worker. So there are, this intersectionality is a very important aspect or dimension to be understood when we are trying to explore this term transphobia, as well as, in general in transgender studies, because a transgender person may be, exploited or harassed for various other reasons, like belonging to another class or another race. There can be different dimensions to that also. So now we come to another term, that is passing. Now, what does passing mean? Actually, it refers to all those ways and methods by which an individual tries to hide the original sex. Original sex here refers to the sex that is assigned to him or her at the time of birth, but without undergoing the surgical procedures. Generally, though they can be employed, like as there is mastectomy, voice therapy, plastic surgery, but beyond that also, there are various ways where you try to hide the fact that you are transsexual or you are transgendered. That is, maybe by way of your body language, the way you, talk, the way you clothe yourself, or the way you comb your hair or style your hair, your body posture. All these can be different ways and means to hide the fact that you are transsexual or transgendered, and to prevent yourself or to present yourself as being a real woman or a real man. So it is biologically, you can very well understand this fact that it is quite easy for a woman to pass as a young man than for a man to pass as a woman. Now, what is the need for passing? Why do they want that we should not be caught? We should not be understood by people. That people should not really come to know that we are transgendered, because that they know that the moment they are caught by people as being transgender, they would be subjected to job discrimination, prejudice, where they will be denied housing facilities, health facilities. They would be subjected to violence, everywhere. So survival is still a very important, aspect where a transgender population goes. So therefore, they try to hide the fact that they are transgender people. Now I have a clipping, a nice clipping here for you people to look at, where this trans girl is trying to give certain ways and, so that one may pass.
I not like that video anymore. I'm sorry for constantly deleting. I mean, those silly. So when I was like 13, 14, 15, a water bra is basically like a synthetic boob. Oh my God, guys, I'm gonna get demonetized so fucking fast. YouTube, world was friends with one of my best friends. Can I also take those pills? And was like, did not.
Umami Ultra Light. Come safely, come Chiptika or Ultra Light. Umami healthy and tasty Ultra Light soybean tail.
now I don't need them anymore, but they like I
See,
don't know. My hairline is kind of square, and also my hair is like a little thinner around like here. Usually contour these parts. You should contour always. Like contouring is an essential for everyone in your hairline. It's like we're just plain brown eyeshadow and overall not aesthetic. Biological males have longer faces. My face is actually kind of long. If you want to get like a more cutesy, young, feminine, I'm glowing from within and I don't want to die look, what I do is I apply blush right almost like under my eye, so very high up and along my cheekbones, so that your face looks a little bit more, it looks like, oh, I'm high-waisted jeans are a lifesaver. I swear to God, if the low-waist jeans from the 2000s ever come back, I am gonna yeet myself off the earth, because that was not a fun time. And like slimming in your waist, I don't look 9 months pregnant, feminine figure. You could pad. Why did I make that move anymore? Because like my eye is not the most flattering. You should also not like overcompensate and posture so much that you're in pain. That's not fun. We're not trying to do that. So if you just try to have your shoulders back or a little just like back and relaxed, it will make you look saying your last video was better. Expertise on, like I don't have expertise on training your voice and things like that. So I don't want deleting that shit right now. Cheesiest thing ever, but it is true. Confidence, even faking confidence. And mind you, I fake my confidence 100% of the time because I secretly hate myself. It mean to us that the only person we really have is ourselves. And in the end, you should rely on yourself and your ability to shine. Be like, fuck you, I look amazing. We're in quarantine, the whole world is going to shit. Is the whole passing thing. I don't want to make anyone feel bad about themselves if you're not fixated on passing all the time. I actually think it's really healthy. It's good for anyone, but sometimes if you really do want to pass more to fit in like the gender binary, it can help your self-esteem, but just don't get too carried away with it, because I did. Sometimes I can just be so about looking different while comfortable with yourself. And I don't want to make anyone feel bad about themselves that they should pass more, because in reality, you should just do what you fucking want and what makes you happy. Because as I've said like 100 times, transitioning is about becoming happy, not about becoming a perfect feminine.
so that was about it, you know. So how this trans girl, you know, she is trying to give certain tips, you know, how a male who has transitioned, basically not exactly transitioned physiologically, maybe can look like a girl by, you know, kind of the contouring of the face, you know, with the help of the hem of your hair, then, you know, the way you put on your blush, your makeup, then the kind of clothes, you know, she mentions that how she wears high waist jeans, the kind of body posture that you should assume, and most importantly, the confidence, you know, that you should carry, with which you should carry yourself. So here, you know, there is this concept which has been explained, but very importantly, you know, as you say that, as you might have listened here, that passing is important to avoid, you know, maybe attract attention in the public, undue attention, which makes you feel very uncomfortable. A transgender person feels uncomfortable, or to avoid violence, as I said. But then, you know, she says that one should be, you know, a transgender person should be confident enough And transitioning should not become a painful or an artificial, a burdensome task for him or her, because transitioning actually means to become a happier you and not a perfect you. So this is very essential, to understand about passing. Now, another term that we would like to, discuss here is gay bashing. Now, what is gay bashing? It is basically the role that gender plays in acts of violence. And Vivian Namaste has, as whom I introduced to you earlier, has given this term, gay bashing, a new name, that is gender bashing. And here she also introduces another term, erasure. How, erasure, as you can very well make out, it is from the word erase, right? How we are trying to exclude, not only marginalize, push them to the borders of the society, but even exclude them altogether, their bodies, their experiences, everything, from the society. That so much, erasure means that they are completely put out, from our view. They disappear from our view. That is what is understood by erasure. So further, Namaste, speaks about this term gay bashing and says that gay bashing is a perceived transgression of normative sex or gender relations, which motivates what violence against them. We think that, okay, they have transgressed, these people have transgressed our societal norms with respect to sex and gender relationship, and therefore, they ought to be, kind of punished for it. And we wreak all kinds of violence on them. So, gay bashing can also stand for assault on those transgressive bodies, right? Where we are trying to police, we are trying to limit, we are trying to curtail, we are trying to monitor their gender presentation, both in the public and private space. And then finally, gay bashing examines the ways by which, as these transsexual and transgender people, they are rendered invisible. That is, invisible means, as Namaste just now introduced this term, erasure. They are simply erased by the key texts that ignore violence against transsexual and transgender people. Now, coming to a very important term, that is cisgender. This was, basically this term emerged during 1990s when trans activists, they had begun to write and speak much about sex and gender. And there this term was used, cisgender, to describe those individuals, maybe, let us put it like this, like you and me, where we are fortunate enough that our sex here, as I told you in the beginning, our reproductive organs or our sexual organs, they correspond with the social category, with the psychological identity, with which we identify ourselves with, right? So I have, for example, I am a woman. I have the sexual organs of a female, of a woman, and I feel within also as a woman. Such people, there is no dichotomy, there is no ambivalence between their sex and gender identity. That these such people are called cisgender, right? So their gender is on the same side as their birth assigned sex. Whereas in the case of a transgender person, their gender is on the opposite side of their birth assigned sex. Maybe, as I just now mentioned, that they have the organs, sexual organs of a man, but they feel that they are a woman psychologically or from within, right? So why we use this term cisgender? Now, we can call, say that non-transgender can be a synonym for cisgender. But why this term cisgender? Because, the term came under criticism for the negative quality of its identity description. Non-transgender, that is the person who is not a transgender, such has a negative quality. Such a term has a negative aspect to it. So using the term cisgender has a more of a positive identification of a non-trans identity. So cisgender helps distinguish diverse sex or gender identities without reproducing unstated norms associated with cisness. For example, instead of simply saying man or woman, one would use cis woman or trans man in much the same way one would use black woman or white woman. So as a substitute for non-transgender, cisgender can be viewed as a way of including transgender as a categorical equal in the complex way we identify as sexed and gendered human beings. Now, what is cisgenderism? You all might have, come across this term of sexism, right? Now, sexism is associated, as you know, with power and privilege aligned with maleness, right? It is basically the men are its focus. With maleness as it focuses on men and that which is masculine as being valued above women and that which is deemed feminine, right? But cisgenderism expands the oppression that is captured by capturing not only power and privilege associated with being male, but also the power and privilege of identifying as someone whose gender identity aligns with assigned sex at birth. So sexism, we say, is the oppression. Why? Because, by virtue of being a man, that is what is, the kind of power and privilege that you assume, right? And the kind of violence or harassment that you perpetuate by virtue of being a man. But the kind of oppression which you perpetuate by virtue of being a cisgender person is cisgenderism. Like here, there is a wonderful example given here, like a cisgender woman who does not want, maybe, she works in some institution, and there is gender neutral restrooms that need to be built, but she is not happy with that. So this is not sexism, this is cisgenderism, right? So we do not like people, we oppress those people who do not have a correlation between their sex and gender, and we put them to much of, harassment or oppression, whatever, right? Okay, I think we are short of time. I'll just introduce you to certain, literature that you all can enjoy reading, and then that can be, a point of takeoff, for further studies and analysis and exploration, research, right? So we have these beautiful 5-6 biographies and autobiographies of some prominent transgender people of India. Here we have, a life in trans activism by A. Revati. Then there is another one by A. Revati, The Truth About Me, a Hijra life story. Then another autobiography is Red Lipstick. This is by Lakshmi. And this is a biography of Manobi Bandyopadhyay, a gift of goddess Lakshmi. Then another autobiography is Living Smile Vidya's I Am Vidya, a transgender's journey. And then Lakshmi, Me Hijra, Me Lakshmi, that is her autobiography. So these are very interesting autobiographies of these prominent transgender people. But at the same time, we have wonderful autobiographies, where foreign authors are concerned, they also have written about their journey as a transgender, their way of transitioning and the way they have gone through it. So this is one, Transition, the story of my life with a transgender by Nell Rose. And as a transgender, teen, it is not easy, to be a transgender teen. So Being Jazz, is a wonderful book about that. And we should be very, very, sensitive to this particular area, where parenting is concerned, how a mother or a father, how they manage to be a parent, a good parent to a child who is a transgender, how they help them to cope with the immense struggles, on every front. They have to, wage a battle, whether it is, societal, familial, or psychological, on every front, they have to wage a battle. So these are two books which are very good for this. And then, as I mentioned to you, intersectionality. Here we have, two books, Becoming Eve, where, a person who have two identities. One, that she is a rabbi, and then another, she is a transgender woman. It is very difficult for such a person because certain communities, societies have so much of orthodoxy and they're so conservatives that it is very difficult for these people to survive or to lead a life that they want to. And similarly, there is another one by Samra Habib, We Have Always Been Here. And, it is a queer Muslim memoir. So, these two books bring out this very important aspect of intersectionality vis-a-vis the transgender people. So I'll stop here. Thank you so much, all of you, for your patience. I'll stop sharing.
Yes. Thank you very much, ma'am, for the wonderful, very, very insightful lecture. Because as you mentioned several times, you reiterated throughout the lecture that transgenders continue to be a marginalized and neglected as well as tortured section of the society. And not much has changed. It has taken several centuries for our government to introduce a section called transgender in the forms, because there are still many places where only male and female are mentioned as an option to tick when we are filling a form. And in many places, transgender is still not an option. So I can't imagine how it would be to feel that invisible living in a society. And that's why such lectures and such talks are really, really very important. Thank you very much, ma'am, for doing it justice. If with your permission, we can.
Yeah, please.
Yes. So there is one question in the comment section here by Mr. Manjunath NL. What is the difference between sexual orientation and gender identity?
That is what I mentioned to you. Sexual orientation, that is what your sex is, whether by virtue of your reproductive organs or sexual organs, whether you are a man or a woman or a girl or a boy, right? But on the other hand, what you identify with, the gender with which you identify yourself with, irrespective of the sexual organs you are born with, right? That is the difference between sexual identity and gender identity.
Yes, ma'am. I do want to add here that, as you mentioned, there are cis men and women, and then there are trans men and women. And then among cis, there will be heterosexuals and homosexuals. So that can be part of the sexual orientation also.
Yes, of course. That is an aspect, who we are attracted towards, as I told you, the sexual partner that we want. That is also an important part of sexual orientation.
Yes, ma'am.
And these are linked also, sexual orientation and gender identity, despite being, having the female organs, you are attracted towards a female only. Right? Then you wonder that why is it happening? Right? Because, actually you are not, that correlation between sex and gender is not happening. That is why.
Absolutely true, ma'am. Nidhi has made an observation here in the comment section. A film is going to be released about transgenders. Sushmita Sen is playing the role.
Yes, Tali. There are many other, that is also I'm working on. There are many other transgender, movies based on transgender people's lives, or, where we have number of Bollywood movies, where we have different types of transgender people who are portrayed, like, right now I'm forgetting the exact names. There was one on a political leader, who went on to become a political leader. So we have a lot of examples, in both in Bollywood as well as Hollywood too.
Absolutely, ma'am. I had a question in that connection, but you have already answered it, but I'll still just mention it. What is the impact of movies on the social perception and attitude towards transgenders?
That is what needs to be researched upon.
Yes,
we
ma'am.
need to research this, explore this question.
Absolutely. Kritika ji has written, it is interesting to observe how even toys and games promote a particular gender behavior.
Yes, of course. Right from the beginning.
Absolutely true, ma'am. I also want to add here that there are several social myths. For example, transgenders or homosexuality is it is influenced by social media exposure or fashion, etc. And I think that has also contributed a lot to transphobia and hatred towards homosexuals or transgender.
See, whatever it's very commonplace observation that whatever we watch on the screen leaves a tremendous impact on us, right? So naturally, this area also, whatever we watch, it is going to make an influence our ways of thinking and perceiving and behaving towards these people.
Yes, ma'am. But the myth is that by interacting with homosexuals or by being in their company, a heterosexual might become a homosexual, but that is not true. So such kind of myths are people have such notions.
Even I think that is of least possibility.
Yes, ma'am.
But how you perceive them, definitely, that is influenced by the media, whether it is print media or in social media or any media.
Absolutely, ma'am. So I think we can end this lecture with a positive note. Ms. Shivleela Nandgavi has written, nowadays transgender community people are getting reservation in India. Karnataka government, because she's from Karnataka, she has mentioned that they have appointed transgender teachers as well as given them reservation.
In fact, there are many such examples, but still, there is much that needs to be done for the welfare of these people. It is still very, very miserable law. It is miserable.
Absolutely, ma'am. There is still much need for awareness and alertness because society in general doesn't know of the...
It is prejudiced towards these people.
Yes. When something is different from us, we tend to hate it. So it has
not easily accepted, if not hated, but not easily accepted.
Yes, ma'am. So thank you.
If there are any more queries, we can always, interact via email or something. You can share my email.
Sure, ma'am. I will share the email as well as the names of all the books which you have mentioned in your presentation.
There are many more. I'm sorry to interrupt you. There are many, many more. It's for you now to explore it. This is just a very, just a spark. You need to now kindle that fire, yourself.
Thank you so much, ma'am. So we have come to the end of today's lecture session, and I take this opportunity to propose a vote of thanks. I thank from the bottom of my heart and on behalf of all the history enthusiasts, Dr. Bulbul Gupta ji, for giving this wonderful, insightful, and very, very relevant lecture on a very important topic. Thank you so much, ma'am. I also thank all the members, all the history enthusiasts who have joined us today through this lecture, and all those who will be watching it on YouTube later on, because many members were not able to join due to some or the other reason. And I thank our Vice President, Ms. Nidhi Katti, and our Executive Member, Dr. Aditya Hegde, for joining and for being part of today's session. Thank you all so very much. I just want to make an announcement before signing off. We are going to organize a one-day webinar on the history of Indian English literature on 17th of this month. And we will soon be releasing the brochure. I request all the interested members to kindly sign up for it and be part of it and learn much more about the Indian English literature, both pre-independence and post-independence. Thank you all very much. Your support means a lot to us. Signing off here. Goodbye. Have a nice weekend.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.